What's going on YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 1 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Beast Morphers episode 8. This episode is called The Cybergate Opens, and this episode introduces us to the two other Rangers finally. I'm going to just straight up say that. Gold and Silver were introduced. Very cool. We got to know who is Silver finally, which I've been waiting for quite some time to know exactly who is Silver. And pretty good episode overall. So let me get started. The way that this episode begins is that we see that Nate is near an ice cream machine that's inside Grid Battle Force. He's trying to get his ice cream. And the thing is that Ben is tracking Betty using these tracker devices that they have. And the tracker device brings Ben to the ice cream machine. And he's like, well, apparently Betty's supposed to be here. The reason why that she is there is because she's actually inside of the ice cream machine. And when Nate is trying to get his ice cream, the ice cream actually falls on Betty. And so she gets covered in ice cream. From there, what we end up seeing is that Nate is working on a morpher. Yes, a morpher device and also new weapons. At first, the Ranger's saying it's for them, but it's really not for them. It's for other characters. So what we do end up seeing is that that's happening. At the same time, Nate has to go out and get some DNA from some insects to make some new Rangers, technically. So what we end up seeing as well is that, you know, the three Rangers are going to go out and help him so that he's watched and protected because he can't be out alone. And at the same time, we end up seeing on the villain side that the villains need to create a robot body in order for Evox to take over it and come to the real world, because he can't just exist as is. He has to have a robot or machine type of body to exist in. So that's what happens there. So what does end up happening is that they realize that they can't do it, but they need a genius who knows how to actually make a robot like that to do it. And so who do they get to do it? They end up trying to get Nate, and they know that Nate is not very strong, and so what happens is that Blaze and Roxy try to take advantage of the situation and capture him. But what we end up seeing is that the Rangers and Nate are together. Nate ends up getting some Mantis DNA and also some Scarab Beetle DNA. In Japan, it was actually a Stag Beetle and a Scarab Beetle, not a Mantis and a Scarab Beetle, but they decided to change it for America. Who knows why? But we end up seeing that, and what happens is that the Rangers have to go and deal with a monster attack. In the meantime, Nate ends up being captured by Blaze and Roxy and brought to their base where he has to develop a robot to summon forth Evox. And so Evox can exist in the human or the real world, basically. So what happens is that Nate does that, but he also has a plan up his sleeve. So he's not just going to do it and let them get their way, but at the same time, it's not going to be so simple. So the Rangers do have to fight the monster. They do pretty well, but they don't manage to finish him off. Then what happens is that they're trying to find where Nate is, and they're searching all around for the Robotron as well. And what happens is that when they head back to the base, they're told by Ben that he was looking because what happens is that Ben and Betty at one point are using their tracker devices, and they're trying to decide what movie they want to see. So they're originally going to flip a coin, but so they flip one of the tracker devices, and the tracker device lands on top of the vehicle that the Morph X was taken with the Robotron. And what happened is that it stays on there, and they get knocked over, and and then they end up heading back to the base, and they tell the Rangers what happened, and the Rangers are like, well, why don't we use the tracker device that we do have to track down the tracker device that was on that vehicle so we can find where Nate is. And so that's what they decide to do. So they end up tracking the device down to the warehouse where Nate is located, and they have to be very careful. And what happens is that inside of there, they begin to start the Cybergate, which Nate develops the technology, makes it work and everything like that, and creates the robot. And what happens is that right as they open up the gate, what happens is that Evox tries to go into the body, but when he's super close to getting inside of the body, Nate ends up summoning his Morpher, and he ends up blasting the Cybergate, which leads to a big explosion that knocks Evox out of the body, and also affects Blaze and Roxy. And they're like, hey, he must have interfered, and so they're about to attack him. What happens is that Nate jumps into the scene. He ends up going in front of the robot that he made. And what happens is that with it, he ends up using the Cybergate to transform, and the DNA also ends up interacting with the robot. And what happens is that Nate ends up transforming into the Gold Ranger. So we get to see that transformation. At the same time, we see that the robot ends up falling over. And what happens is that Nate ends up battling. He's using his Strike Morpher. That's what they refer to it as, the Strike Morpher, or the Striker Morpher. And what happens is that he ends up fighting, and then from there, what happens is that the robot initially doesn't have horns, but then suddenly he gains horns, and he comes to life, and then he transforms on his own, and he is the Silver Ranger. So yes, we get to finally see the Gold and the Silver Ranger. The Gold and the Silver Ranger deal with Blaze and Roxy. They're winning, and we end up seeing that the Silver Ranger has a lot of flair, a lot of personality. He's very arrogant, and I love it. Honestly, a lot of people have already been saying how much they love the Silver Ranger. I really, really do love the Silver Ranger myself, so I was really, really happy to see that. So we get to see all that. The Rangers outside are continuing to fight and everything, but eventually what does end up happening is that the Gold and the Silver Ranger end up heading out, and what happens is the other three Rangers are like, "Who are you guys?" And suddenly they're like, "Hey guys, it's me, it's Nate. I'm the Gold Ranger," basically. And behind them, we end up saying, "Well, who's he?" And he's like, "Oh, I haven't introduced you guys to him." And he's like, "Introductions are for later, I think." Like, it was just really funny. I loved it. And we ended up seeing the two of them going up against the Robotron. At the same time, a Gigatron is summoned, so the three other Rangers have to use their Megazord to go up against the Gigatron, which they managed to destroy. And what happens is that Gold and Silver managed to defeat the Robotron, which is awesome. And really good stuff. The end of the episode leads to them being like, "I was triumphant." Like, what do you call it? Silver was just so, ecstatic, and we get to see him as the Beastbot he is, because he is a Beastbot. He's also human, and he's also a Ranger. So he's kind of like a triple threat, which is pretty cool. And you may think to yourself, where's the human aspect? So we end up learning about that apparently when Nate became the Gold Ranger, at the same time, his DNA, like Nate's DNA and the Scarab DNA combined with this Beastbot to create this triple threat of a human, which was the human element came from Nate, the robot element came from himself, and then the Scarab DNA made him, with that combination, allowed him to become the Silver Ranger. So the human DNA comes from Nate, and essentially it allowed him to make his own brother. Like he's been saying since really, really early in the show, that, "Oh, I always wanted a brother. I always wanted to have a brother." He keeps saying that, so he has a brother. And the thing is that he ends up saying, "Well, what should we call him?" And then the Silver Ranger tries to come up with some crazy, fabulous name, and the last part of the name is Steel. So they're like, "You know what? We'll just call you Steel." And so that's his name. His name is Steel. So I keep on saying Silver Ranger because I didn't want to spoil his actual name. So yes, we have 4 Rangers: Devin, Zoe, Ravi, Nate, and Steel. Those are our 5 Rangers for the season. Very cool. I like the choices. I'm looking forward to seeing how the show will go from here. We did get to see them use their blade weapons, which we didn't get to hear what the official name for their weapons are yet, but I'm looking forward to it. In Japan, they're called dry blades. As far as how similar Steel is to his Japanese counterpart, Beat J, Stag, or your BJ Stag or whatever, he's very, very similar. He has a very similar personality overall, so really good there. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of him in general. I've been the most excited for him overall, just because I didn't know what to expect. So really, really happy about that, knowing exactly what they meant by him being half human, half robot, and all that. Like, what does that mean? Now we know what that means. So yeah, they're very happy. Things are good. And the episode overall was really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing future ones. As far as when they should be getting their Zords, hopefully by episode 9 or 10 or so, maybe a little later, it really depends. This again was a big jump from episode 7, because in the Japanese show, this episode, when they were introduced in Japan, was episode 14. So they literally went from episode like 6 or 7, I think it was, maybe 8, to all the way up to episode 14 in this one episode right then and there. So that's a huge jump. And again, a lot of times in Power Rangers, they tend to do these big jumps where like something that may have taken way longer, they cut out like a whole bunch of episodes that they decide aren't going to be used, just because they're not going to use those episodes. So just keep that in mind. And it doesn't mean that they won't ever use those episodes. It's just not as likely unless they decide to do some refilming and stuff like that that doesn't feature the Gold and Silver Ranger. So keep that in mind. More likely than not, they're done with those episodes, and from now on we'll be getting a lot of episodes that will have the 5 of them, which I'm looking forward to so much so, and just seeing how they interact with each other and how that whole thing works out. So overall, really happy. Again, anyone that's expecting episode 9 to happen this spring, no, pretty much at this point, since it is now Saturday when episode 8 has released now, and there's been no confirmation of any details regarding episode 9. If anyone was expecting that the hiatus would not happen now, I'm sorry to tell you, but we are at the hiatus point. So what that means is that we will not be seeing the show again, most likely till August, if not September. So keep that in mind. So it's not as bad as it's been in past years. Typically in past years, it's been about like a 4-month hiatus. This time around, it's going to be closer to probably about a 3-month hiatus or so, or actually it's 4 months. It normally would be 5, actually. That's what I'm going to say, because in the past it's typically been like early April, if not like March or so. It really depends, but yeah, so different situation this year. Hopefully it will start on the early side of August, but we'll have to wait and see. So just stay tuned for that. I'll have more information as more things come out. And as far as things go otherwise, next month we should be getting confirmation, most likely, as to what the title will be for the second season of Beast Morphers as well. So just stay tuned for that as well, because I should have information regarding the name, whether or not it will be called Super Beast Morphers or Beast Super Morphers or whatever they choose to name it, or something unique and interesting like Ultra Beast Morphers, or I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.